The SteelerFury Mock Draft War Room 2026. Hello and welcome again to another exciting edition of the Pittsburgh Steelers Show on the SteelerFury.com podcast. For the next episode of the Draft Extravaganza week here at the SteelerFury.com show, every year, bunch of episodes to get you ready for the NFL draft and the Steelers part in the NFL draft. And, frankly, this is a big one. This is the Steelers War Room, where we are going to try to consolidate all that scouting and all that players that we're interested in and all the different mock drafts that we've done. We're going to try to consolidate that into a board that we're then going to use in a live mock draft like we did last year for the Epic Mock 26. Last year we did the Epic Mock 25. And if you look down below, you can see the link to our how we did last year at this exercise. But it's fun. We're working against 32 other podcasters, all participating in the live draft, 3 days long, just like the regular NFL draft. Should be a load of fun. And here with me is Jeremy Coleman to help us on the way. How are you doing, Jeremy?
Doing good. Ready to talk some prospects.
and we'll be joined by Corey Korbowski as well at some point, and we're going to go through and get all three of us our different takes, and we'll find out the players that we have, prospects that we have in common that we like, and then the ones that we don't agree on, which would be fun. We probably last year, I think, had a remarkably small number of disagreements, I think, for three people with such strong opinions about stuff. But hey, we may not make it through that again this year. We'll see how it goes. And in case you weren't with us last year, you may be overwhelmed by this. So just a warning for those of you who have color blindness or other issues with crazy stuff on your screen.
Yeah, flashes.
I'm going to give you a little insight into my brain, which is this is the board, kind of the pre-board that we work with position by position. Here's to give you an idea what all this means. If you look at the top row, it shows the categories of positions. And I separated some of them, like tight ends and wide receivers, into different categories. I did this just because there's so many in the draft, and it's kind of a little bit difficult to look at the 30th name down who might be the best slot receiver on the board. So I just try to separate them into some different types, and I added a new one this year with versatile wide receiver, because as we discussed in the episode about Steelers needs, it feels like the Mike McCarthy offense is really focused on trying to find wide receivers who can play inside and out and had a lot of, a wide array of skills instead of just like one really good tool in a toolbox. And then you'll see, if you look just to the left of the column that has the position names in it, you'll see numbers. What those numbers are is slightly different this year. I'm using a different system. Every year I do a lot of paying attention to what all the different rankings and mock drafts are like throughout the course of the draft season. And usually I do something that's like a composite of what all the other drafts are, and just like whatever, if they were 400th in one draft and 200th in another, then their ranking is 300 is listed on there. But I realized that last year, especially when we did this exercise, that there were players that were sort of more late risers, and those players were getting picked earlier than their what people might have thought of them before the combine or something like that. So what I did instead was I took a number that is the highest that they were ranked or picked in a mock draft during the course of the last since the combine, and that yielded. I'd use this when I was doing a drafted team. For those of you familiar with our drafted team exercise, where we have 20 people working against each other in a snake draft and building a team. And so in this case, I was like, I had a much better feel for when players were coming off the board when I had to take someone because of where I could expect them to go. So if you see that sometimes there's a similar numbers or very close numbers, or there's a lot of people who have, even the same number, it isn't necessarily that they're all going to get picked at this. If you look at Jennings Dunker and it says 43, it's not necessarily that he's the 43rd ranked player in the class, but 43rd is the earliest he's gotten picked. So
Mm.
if you thought that, if we absolutely, it's Jennings, Dunker, no matter what in the draft, you'd have to have pick something before 43 in order to feel like it'd be very surprising if he went earlier than 43. So that's what that means. And then you got the color scheme. This color scheme is something I've been using for a long time. So anybody who's either seen my boards in the past or my position rankings that I put out every year, or was with us last year in this exercise, this is the color scheme I use. It makes sense to me. I'm sorry, it doesn't really make sense to anybody else, but here's how it goes. The players in black with white lettering are players that I feel like are the top of the position group as far as how they would fit the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? So if I think to myself, I think of it in these terms. If any of these guys were available to us at pick 21, we would run to the podium probably and take one of them, or at the very least pick a comparable player or have a strategy for how we're going to get a comparable player, whatever, right? But they would be like the players I feel like are the best at their position groups at positions that are needs for the Steelers. If you're in purple, you are a player that's the next level down for me. So you're my favorite players or best, players that I think are the best values at the various positions. Green are players that are very good, would be very happy with them. They're maybe a shade below the players in red. So I kind of think of them like, the players in black are like top 15 picks. The players in purple, I would be comfortable taking them in the top 100 of the draft. And then the players in green are probably players that late on day 3 or late in the 3rd round or early on day 4. And then finally, the players in red are players that have either an injury or off the field red flag issue. Doesn't mean that they're not draftable necessarily, although some of the off the field is so bad that they're probably not on my draft board. Colby Young, excuse me. But
right.
But the in general, they would just be players that might, deserve a higher ranking, maybe even Jordan Tyson in the black and white group. But, there's just some questions about his health, for instance. So that's what all this means. Now, when we're going to go through and Jeremy and Corey talk about players they like, I'm going to add their players that are, they feel strongly about at some of these spots, and we're going to change their color scheme. And then the reason we're doing it this way is we'll walk out of this knowing where players are likely to go because of the numbers you see on the screen. And then when you look at the color scheme, we'll know how the players we like fit in the scheme of the draft picks and where we might be able to select them with our picks. So we're working at where we expect them to go, and we're also ranking them in tiers of, super good, really good, pretty good, so and so on. So that's what it's all about. Jeremy, did that make any sense to you? Or did you fall asleep during the explanation?
No, I'm still with you. I did have a quick question though. Did you say what gray represented?
No, gray represents, it not necessarily for tonight's exercise, but since it was on there, players that in the mocks when I was working, when I was doing mocks that were not on my board at all. Like, in other words,
gotcha.
I wasn't really that interested in them at the place where I knew they were going to go.
Okay.
And so I took them off. It's not necessarily that I don't like them. It's probably just that I either don't think they were great fits for me for what I was looking for, or they were not great fits for the Steelers.
Gotcha.
So that's
you don't have to fix it or now or whatever.
No, I should now because we get people at home who are like, what is going on the screen? Who haven't tuned out already. And now joining us, of course, after we went through all the heavy lifting of the different groups, is the one and only Corey Korbowski. What's happening, Corey?
How's it going, Will? How have you been?
I'm good. What what part of the world are you in, actually?
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Who can keep track? You were in like 7 cities this week or something.
No, I did the math. I've been at least over 12 states in the past week and a half.
So anyway, look, why don't you get us started, Jeremy? And let's talk a little bit about what is the biggest need for the Steelers, whether the Steelers end up drafting a quarterback in this draft. Let's talk about the quarterbacks in this class and tell me about maybe somebody that you like, someone that you don't like so much, and maybe a sleeper.
Gotcha. Well, at quarterback, I may be a little biased, but there is this guy named Fernando Mendoza who I think
I heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, who's really dang good. So disappointed. I found out he will not be going to the draft, which is disappointing. I just bought a Fernando Mendoza jersey to take him to the draft, but it is what it is. I obviously like him. His tape is really, really good. And I think the thing there is he's only going to get better. For as good as he was, he still has a lot to learn, and I have no issue with thinking he's not going to get better. He is a very unique individual. The man is highly motivated, very talented. I think he'll do really good. Kind of that next tier down. When healthy, I thought Garrett Nussmeier showed a lot of good qualities in a starting quarterback. He could get the ball where it needed to go to. Good arm, not elite by any means, but more than good enough to make, NFL throws. A little bit of an athlete too, can scramble around, not just going to be stuck in the pocket. So he was kind of my kind of mid-round guy. I was like, yeah, he's got tools. When he was healthy, he played at a decent level. He's got to knock down the interceptions a little bit. I think he forced some throws, but I mean, a lot of these guys do that. And
Taylor Green, I think, is
as far as like my super
the exact
sleeper,
kind of quarterback that
Jack Strand,
we should be going for every year.
Minnesota Moorhead.
If you get Taylor Green in your room for a year,
he's a fun guy to watch.
Like, yeah, this guy really just doesn't have.
Gave off
take the next toolsiest guy in the next draft,
like Ben Roethlisberger type of vibe.
Point blank,
big,
the most toolsy
strong,
guys
tall
are the
in the
ones
pocket type of guy, but he actually
let's
had
say
a
what you
hell
want
of a
about
pro
Rodgers,
day. I
but
think he
Rodgers
went to
had
the
a
North
hose coming
Dakota
out.
State Pro Day, ran like a
there's a reason he was so
4.7,
successful for
which
so long. So
didn't really show up
I
on
think
tape.
it's just with him,
especially at the
you're
level when
betting
you see
on
him
tools.
take off.
As far as like the sort of more highly thought of players that I actually really like, Taylor Green is a guy that I don't know if it's a right pick for Pittsburgh's coaching staff and their situation, because they don't really have someone who's known to be a quarterback guru who can get the mechanical and or clock issues with Taylor Green, things that are sort of like inconsistent. They're not necessarily bad for him. They're just inconsistent. And maybe if you have the right kind of person that can help the game slow down for him, and help him be more consistent, I think you could get Josh Allen. I mean, the upside is stupid. So if you're going to take a swing at a quarterback in the class that doesn't have a lot of super exciting names in it, then I would like to take a swing on somebody who's really something, like the highlight reel plays for Taylor Green are endless, running the football and throwing the football. He has some incredible throws, and I don't mean just throwing deep balls. I mean like throwing to covered guys in the middle of the field in who are theoretically triple covered and fitting in a mailbox size window. That's just like, you can't teach that. And you certainly can't teach having the confidence or the guts to make that throw. Right. So it's like he needs to be with a team that'll let him make his mistakes, but yet have a plan for how to make him get better. Since I don't know if that's Pittsburgh, that's hard for me to believe.
And then as far as like my super sleeper, Jack Strand from Minnesota Moorhead.
He's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah, he gave off some like Ben Roethlisberger type of vibes, big, strong, tall in the pocket type of guy, but he actually had a hell of a pro day. I think he went to the North Dakota State Pro Day, ran like a 4.7, which didn't really show up on tape, especially at the level when you see him take off. It's like, okay, who is he outrunning here at Minnesota Moorhead State or whatever? But he's got some wheels. And then he was a name that kind of came on several months ago, went on YouTube, looked at some clips or whatever. And it's like, yeah, he has a lot of the tools. So just seemed like a toolsy guy in a quarterback draft class, which really is super underwhelming from a most point, if you ask me. And I thought, yeah, if there's a guy that I'd love to like just take a chance on and maybe like stash and like really work with him, he gave off a lot of quality quarterback vibes to me. So
I felt like I was really impressed with his ability to make plays outside structure. And so the question will be, coming from the smaller school environment, I think that's D2, right, where he is?
yeah.
So the question is, I would have liked to seen him have a year where he got to move up, and you could at least frame his style of play to see if it works. But I think it's probably easier to get a guy to be able to play within structure than it is to find a guy who's very good in structure but is not as good at playing outside structure. And for example, I would say Carson Beck is a guy that I feel like is pretty good within structure, and when you protect him and the guys are open, he can deliver and make plays. When the play breaks down or he has to make plays outside of structure, or it's crunch time and all of the above, it's not pretty, right? So that's the reason that I think maybe I am, and I don't know if you are, but lower on him than consensus.
Sure.
I feel like that's a tough thing to fix. It's tougher to fix that than it is to fix some of the things with Jack Strand, but you're just not going to know until you get him out of that level of competition.
Right.
I do like Jack Strand. I'm really curious to see where he goes. I don't know, because like up there it says 194.
Well, but don't look at it that way. That's actually the end of that's seventh round, because it's more like, the numbers equate for like the highest they were ever picked, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of guys that were picked high sometimes.
It's tough to say. Like, he's a guy that I feel like might go higher in the draft. Like, I feel like that 194 number might go, because it's a quarterback, but how the NFL loves their, random 3-year starter Big Ten quarterbacks in like the 5th and 6th round. Like those guys go high. So no, I'm a fan. That's a guy where like, I love Taylor Green, but if we didn't get Taylor Green, that would be the guy that I kind of want to look towards. Like, again, toolsy guy. Like,
yeah. Do you see the Cole Kelly thing?
And he's huge. Like, he's huge with the gun. And
just that it's just run, like when he's running, it's like, all right, he's just gonna fall forward for like 3 or 4 yards, like no problem.
Well, and he's he's not like 25, is he? I thought he's like 23, right?
Yeah, he's not overrated. Yeah. But the guy I actually really like that grew on me a lot the last couple of months is Joey Aguilar from Tennessee. I maybe it's just I'm a sucker for the story, because the story is amazing. He was like ready to sell insurance, and then someone convinced him to like go to play a community college, because he was just so bummed about not being recruited and not having a chance to do anything, and then lit up the JUCO or community college world, and then transferred to App State and set all of App State's passing records, and then went to Tennessee and started off gangbusters in the SEC. Had a benign tumor in his shoulder that kept him from being able to throw properly the last half of the season, but they said it's gone and he's back to normal and whatever. I don't know. What's your take on him? I don't know if you got to see him play.
He's another one. Like, I'd be more willing to take a chance on him than like a couple of those other guys, just because he's got a gun. He can throw. He can spin the ball around the yard. You never know what you're getting with these air raid, quarterbacks. I feel like the track record of them hitting's not high, but like that's what people said about Mahomes. I'm never going to discount a guy forever being good based off of his system. That's a guy who he may just need to sit for a year. Like, it's going to take time, or for all we know, he could be a super fast learner. Mahomes was probably ready halfway through that rookie year. Like, he could be a super fast learner. So, I wouldn't, even though you can be skeptical of those system quarterbacks, you don't have to just scratch them off, because look where Mahomes came out of. Threw for 800 yards in one game or something.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's move on. I'll let you sort of cherry pick some positions and players, and if need be, I'll throw a couple of names at you that we talked about. And then I guess you can, I guess you can't call Cole Payton a sleeper anymore. I would call him more like another guy in the top 5 that's interesting. The Steelers seem to have paid a lot of attention to him. They sent their quarterback coach up there for the pro day, which means they saw both him and Jack Strand. So who knows? Maybe they were looking at Jack Strand. I don't know. But Cole Payton, 1 year of starting in FCS, he did play. He's a senior. He did play a little bit before that, but there's always been somebody before him who was an NFL prospect. So it's not like he just blossomed this year. He's just waited his turn.
Yeah.
He's another guy with a lot of highlights at that level at FCS, both running the football. He's a great runner as well. And he makes a lot of plays in the passing game and had a very high completion percentage, but the caveat is he was playing at a level where
Mm-hmm.
his receiver was better than almost everybody else. And generally, that's just a team that's really great athletes and really well constructed on offense. And so he had a lot of good looks, but he also made plays outside of structure, some mechanical things for him. The biggest thing is the lack of experience. So you don't really, as I said about, guys before, it's like you don't know till you don't know they don't work until you know. Like they have to have enough experience for you to realize what the problem is or what the problem could be or what the barrier will be.
Right.
So with Cole Payton, you don't really know yet what's the barrier, what will happen when he sees tighter, better, faster defenses. As TJ Wengert mentioned in the other episode, the Senior Bowl, he had a little bit more look. You had a bit more of a look at him in that environment, and there were a lot of positives.
With a guy like Cole Payton, I think he's someone, he's got a gun, and NDSU's been one of those offenses. They're not like an air raid offense. They ask for, a lot out of their QBs. So I think I'm right there with you on that one. And with some of those other guys, no interest in really Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik. I don't really have interest in Ty Simpson. I could be talked into Nussmeier. I wouldn't really like him in that 36 range. But, I feel like if you're going to be a first rounder, you got to do something this year, or borderline first. But, yeah, I think even Drew Aller, depending on the range, if that was who it was, I could be swayed into that. But that's not really a guy necessarily target. Just more so like a draft day guy that I wouldn't be upset with if it was the right value.
Yeah. Any kind of sleeper out of these guys that you liked?
I mean, way back in the day, this ended up being the class where there were a ton of guys that I really liked that didn't really pan out. Like I was so high on Kyron Jones after his freshman year.
Yeah.
Caden Salter was another one when he was at Liberty and Virginia Tech. For me, I mean, Mark Gronkowski kind of is what he is. I think he's the guy that he'll play and he'll stick around in the league. Haynes King, I think, is someone where me personally, I wouldn't want to burn like a great pick on him, but I think that just that grittiness and his ability to run, I feel like that opens up a lot of what you can do. I feel like he's got the requisite arm strength. It's just he's going to have to learn how to play NFL quarterback. Mm. So kind of like him. And Diego Pavia, he's a guy that he's one of those backups that I think would win you a couple games. Would I take him to be my franchise savior, which is kind of what the Steelers are more so looking forward to? No. But he's the exact kind of quarterback where if you're taking him to be a backup, he'll get you to 3-1 in a light schedule, if that's what you need him for. This is, I kind of think that this is the quarterback class of could have been Castellanos, Miller Moss, Caden Salter, Kyron Jones, 2-3 years ago. These guys, Daquan Finn, I think, falls in that. Malik Murphy, guys who, kind of thought would turn into something and just really didn't. Nate Johnson, he has wheels. He'll probably convert to receiver or something.
But my sleeper, the guy that I think is actually, almost totally overlooked, and it's also a sneaky good fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they need is Joey Aguilar from Tennessee by way of community college and Appalachian State. So you got a guy here who's bumped, who was unrecruited totally, who then went to community college and almost was ready to give up football and sell insurance or whatever he was going to do, and then went to community college and was so successful there that he got an offer to go to App State. So he went to App State and was set the first year, literally set the passing records. He established all new passing records at App State, which for a player coming out of nowhere was kind of amazing. But then you're like, hey, it's App State. They're playing at a, group of whatever they are, 5, 6 conference. And it's not like they're necessarily playing a lot of tough competition, but he looked great there. So what does he do? He transfers up to Tennessee, and honestly, he the early part of the season especially was kind of amazing. Granted, he had some great targets to throw to at Tennessee. Granted, they have sort of a weird offense there. It may not translate everything he was doing there to the NFL, but I've been on him for a little while. But I heard Phil Simms talking about him. Phil Simpson has him as the third quarterback 3 in this class.
Wow.
And what he said that he noticed that's very different than the other prospects is his ability to read defenses, both pre and post snap. He said is more advanced than most college quarterbacks have before they come into the league. And for somebody who was an unrecruited, lightly recruited player, that's even more amazing. So I think he's mobile enough. He takes big hits without it, having a big drop off in play. He was clutch at times, and is pretty accurate. It has a real compact and advanced throwing motion. So like for all the things that are sort of red flags that you think, oh, like I like him, but I'm not sure about this or not sure about that. And really, it's not his fault. He thought he was going back to school for another year at Tennessee.
Yeah.
And this on the same basis he was fighting to get the eligibility. He expected he was easily going to get that it wasn't really going to be a struggle, and he got denied and lost in court. And so he was sort of a late entry into the whole sweepstakes. And I feel like maybe the league is higher on him than those of us who are like thinking about all the potential draft prospects for the last 6 months. So from that standpoint, if you haven't seen him, I would advise going out to see him. And then the last thing about him is his play dropped a little bit in the latter part of the season, but apparently he had a benign tumor in his shoulder that was affecting his throwing. He had it removed, and by the time he got to the pro day, he was throwing like better than ever. So
he's another one. Like I'd be more willing to take a chance on him than like a couple of those other guys, just because he's got a gun. He can throw, he can spin the ball around the yard. You never know what you're getting with these air raid, quarterbacks. I feel like the track record of them hitting's not high, but like that's what people said about Mahomes. I'm never going to discount a guy forever being good based off of his system. That's a guy who he may just need to sit for a year. Like it's going to take time, or for all we know, he could be a super fast learner. Mahomes was probably ready halfway through that rookie year. Like he could be a super fast learner. So, I wouldn't, even though you can be skeptical of those system quarterbacks, you don't have to just scratch them off because look where Mahomes came out of. Threw for 800 yards in one game or something.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that's my guy. That's my sort of pound the table guy.
Okay.
This draft, because of where the value will be. I would happily take Taylor Green any place. I'm not opposed to the idea of drafting what's his name? Cole Payton. And you could sell me on taking a shot at Jack Strand. But yeah, I just, or Nussmeier or anybody, if you had a good plan. But yeah, that's the guy I think is the guy that fits and that might be available. So anyway, and Corey, I think will have a couple of other names. He's got one in particular I know that he likes. Okay. So moving on to running back, you were saying to me something off air about running back.
Yeah, I feel like there's Pittsburgh has really plugged up the hole at running back, but I know you think there's still some room to add there. Obviously, when we looked at this board, Jeremiah Love is going to be at the top. Sensational player. I'm a little surprised you don't have him in black instead of purple.
Only because I don't know that I would take. I just don't believe in taking a running back where he's going to go.
That's fair. Yeah, he's going to go top 5, top 10.
And I'm a little bit. I felt a little lukewarm about Ashton Genty's rookie season, and I looked at that and I just think, like, how much better do we think he's better than Genty? And if so, how much better is he? And if he goes to a team where he doesn't have all the pieces in place, is he going to be a real factor?
That's fair. That's definitely true.
That would be the difference between someone who's is he transcendent or not? That's my question.
Gotcha.
About him. And I would say for the Steelers at the value where he's going to go, yeah, I could put him in black because he's definitely head and shoulders above the other guys in terms of as an overall running back. So, all right, I'll go with you.
And then, kind of the next guy on my board, believe it or not, is he's on the list or whatever, but Jonah Coleman at Washington. He was actually a pound the table type of guy for me last year. If he ended up going into the draft and not going back to Washington this year,
yeah,
I think he has a chance to be really, really good. And not in like the traditional flashy, oh wow type of deal. He just screams like, I'm going to play running back for 9 and 10 years and I'm going to be good doing it.
Well,
He's not like
one thing I can tell you about Jonah Coleman that no one talks about is pass protection. He's really good. He might be as good as anybody in the class.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the reason I liked him last year, as like a potential guy that, that was injured, that didn't get to finish his season. Like, he's a complete back. Like, there are no, like, almost no holes to his game. And the thing that stands out to me about him is he has fantastic vision. Like, he may not be like the fastest or the biggest, but boy, he knows where to go with the ball. Like, and that's such an underrated thing that, like, a lot of people just don't pick up on, because it's tough to like watch tape sometimes and be like, well, especially as like a fan, and be like, oh, how's his ball carrier vision? But like, you go look at like Washington tape and it's like, wow, yeah, he's going where the play is designed to go. He sees it where it's not, and bounces it out and gets yardage and stuff. Like, I'm a big Jonah Coleman guy.
Yeah, I mean, I have a question about him. How do you see him in terms of his receiving skills? And I'll tell you, after you answer the question, I'll tell you why I'm asking that.
I mean, I think it's good. I don't think it's elite by any means, but I mean, I think he can be that guy, that does a lot of stuff. Honestly, I don't know if you're going to laugh at this comp or whatnot, but last year I kind of comped him to Arian Foster a little bit. Very good all around player, not
right.
like, top tier athlete, but damn, is he just a good football player?
Yeah, I mean, I think that describes him pretty well, and I feel like if the Steelers running back situation were different than it is, then he would be at or near the top of the list for me. As you said, the other guys that are sort of expected to go ahead of him, and right now I'm talking about Jadarian Price and Emmett Johnson and Mike Washington. That Mike Washington has fumble issues. He's an elite athlete. He had a couple of the most killer fumbles in this bad end of the game situations. It was like it pretty much ruined their season, and it's hard to get past that, even as good an athlete and a RAS scores he has and all that stuff. And I think Emmett Johnson is more of like and Price, the same thing, are just runners, really good runners. And if what you're looking for is an early down back to run the football, like, all those guys are good.
Well, I'll say this about running back. I'm glad that we kind of have that room shored up. There's not really many people in this class. There's a couple guys that, there's always guys you kind of like, but even at their values, there's not a ton of guys there that, you find yourself banging on the table for. I'm with you on the one of them. I know he's been your guy, Eli Heidenreich. That's super versatile. I mean, he played, if you look back more so this year, or like the last couple of years, you would see he'd only get like 2 or 3 carries and he'd have like 6 or 7 receptions. He was kind of more of a tight end at times, but he can really carry the ball too. Navy's been a sleeper program these last couple of years. They've had some good talent. I mean, Landon Robinson, I'm blanking on the name. They had that safety last year. I believe he's stuck in the league, but they're a sleeper program.
Yeah.
Caitlin Black, JMU transfer over to Indiana.
Yep.
Real twitchy.
The Steelers situation is not that. They have 2 guys that I think are good enough pass catchers to be able to play any down, and are particularly good, productive runners, and, with the screen pass and the sort of normal running back receiving stuff. For me, the thing that they're missing that they don't have is that element that they had with Kenny G last year, which is a running back who can actually run routes like a wide receiver. And the difference is it allows you so many more options when you get to, must pass, situations. You get a 2-minute drill, you're behind in games. And it's just different. It's like, how much different would Christian McCaffrey make as a third down backer when you're down? What I'm saying is, if you have a guy that's got special skills like that, it adds something to your offense that you're just never going to get. As good as Rico Dowdle and Jalen Warren are at what they do, that's just not what they do. And so I look at this guy right here, Eli Heidenreich, and I don't know if you've seen the comparison. I'll try to remember and put it up on the screen, but the side by side with his measurables compared to Christian McCaffrey. And
Mhm.
it's like he is equal to or better than him in virtually everything, size, athletically, whatever. He's like almost like a clone of Christian McCaffrey. Now, what they had him doing at Navy was an extremely unusual and varied uh, series of positions, tasks. He did everything. He
Mhm.
he was the he played a typical slot wide receiver spread out. He played like an H back setup and took runs or did down blocks in the run game. By the way, extremely well. He knocked defensive ends like sideways off their feet for a guy who's not that big, a lot of power. He ran straight at the end of the game when they were sort of in like, we need to run and get a couple of first downs to run the clock out. He was their running back. He ran straight runs as a running back, but he ran for a service academy. He actually ran routes like passing NFL passing route type things. And here's the kicker, and this is maybe not something that you are familiar with, but I'll bet you those of our viewers and listeners who are from Pittsburgh know he's a Pittsburgh kid.
Okay.
And it's like you're getting a extremely high character person. You're getting somebody that fills a void in what the running back room looks like, and you are getting somebody with incredible upside who's fits this theme of the Mike McCarthy and the Weidels and the local Pittsburgh vibe that they have going on.
Sure.
It would just the draft is in Pittsburgh. Did I mention that? So it will just be. I already bet Jeremy $1 that they were going to draft a running back this year, and I said that because if they don't draft Eli Heidenreich, it'll only be because some other team drafts him way earlier than they expected him to go or something. Because I think he could, fill a return need for you. He can play a little slot receiver. He could be like your fourth wide receiver and can be your third running back. So I just love the fit for Pittsburgh, and I sorry to gush so much over top of him. He's one of my favorite players in the draft.
Heidenreich's frustrating. He's one of those players kind of like that you watch him, and if you're kind of onto him, you just know that he's going to be a thorn in your ass if you play him. Like he's willing to block. He gets vertical, like when he was running the ball. He runs hard. Super soft hands. He's going to route up backers. Like he's can pass protect. He's like a do-it-all back that, does he have Saquon Barkley open field, abilities? No. But he's going to be a guy like, that's like a prototypical, like, ideal number 2 behind, like, not even number 2. Like, he can be your number 1 in this pass catching league. But we'll see. Whenever we fall in love with these kind of players, especially if they're not from a big school, we haven't had a real good hit rate on getting them, like Hunter Lipke,
Yeah. Well, the thing about Heidenreich is he's from Pittsburgh. He grew up in Mount Lebanon. He's this, as I said, I think this is like a real, like, Yinzer theme to this organization right now in terms of like the coaching hire and the front office. And I guess it wouldn't surprise me if you saw a lot of Penn State and local names involved. I think they're really sort of believing in this.
Well, one thing, we kind of mentioned on, our prior episode with TJ, we just need playmakers. So I'm not, against taking, if we think, Eli can be a special, player, across multiple platforms, he is worth, a premium pick, or, I don't know how early or whatever, but like we have 2 4th-round picks. We want to use a 4th-round pick on Eli Heidenreich, and we think we have a real plan for him to develop. Yeah. Why not? I mean,
I feel like that's the sort of the right spot. And if he goes before that, he goes, but yeah, that feels like I feel like I'm going to be happy to draft that kid. I feel like the worst case scenario is he's a pretty good slot receiver, better than many of the slot receivers that we've had in recent years.
Well, wait, hold on. Is wide receiver a need this year?
Yeah. But I feel like, I don't know if I personally am not sure. I mean, when we get into the wide receivers, we can talk about it a little bit more. I'm not really sure that like pure slot receiver is really the thing that they're going to look at. I think the slot receivers they're going to want to see are the ones that can do a little bit of other stuff, because in effect, Pittman is your slot. Pittman is the guy that mostly is a big slot who plays slot, but who can run routes outside. And move around the formation and do different things. But he's really your slot in what Mike McCarthy does. So I don't know that they're going to have Julian Edelman, but if you're going to have a Julian Edelman player, there are a few that we'll get to them.
Yeah. So all I meant was like if the worst if we spend a 4th round pick on him and the worst he comes out to be is a good slot receiver, like, oh no, happy. What were we doing? Like, yeah. So I'm totally on board with.
And I think there'll probably be some either guys in the 7th round or as undrafted free agents that the Steelers might have some interest in that I would have interest in. I know that you Jaden Ott, I think, is a weird case. He's someone that looked great until he got to Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, and I was reading up on him a little bit. He got hurt at Oklahoma too. So by the time he got back, he was back, he was not in the rotation. And then they tried to get him in and just he wasn't very congruent with the offense. So he kind of took a back seat to the other guys there. I will say, he had some great remarks at Pro Day, about how, he was encouraging those guys, because the season obviously didn't go the way he was hoping it to really boost his draft stock and all that. But he seemed like he learned a lot at Oklahoma State being on the bench and kind of trying to, not being the guy and all that. So, just a talent there. And then one last name I'll throw out there that I think has a ton of upside that is really untapped still, Adam Randall from Clemson.
Former wide receiver. Athlete. Yeah.
Super athlete that, if you're just throwing some late round darts to like say, hey, because with him being a receiver, he caught a good amount of balls out of the backfield or whatever. And he has a real slashing mentality to him, which I love. He puts a foot in the ground and just takes off. And I think that's a really underrated quality sometimes with running back. So Randall's good. And then I've always been a little bit of a sucker for Nick Singleton. He's not like super athlete, but boys, he can tank.
Well, he certainly fits the mold of what I'm talking about, which is a running back who can run more like wide receiver routes. Mm-hmm. That's I feel like that's the place where they could add to this offense something that would really help them. And I'll just quickly touch on a couple of later guys that also fit that profile that maybe are drafted, maybe not. They're fringe draftable in terms of how people are seeing the draft. But they're towards the bottom. They're Chip Trayanum. So Chip Trayanum was a linebacker recruit, a very high. He might have been a 4-star linebacker recruit to Ohio State.
Yeah, he was.
And he just didn't work. He was okay at linebacker, but he was kind of like remember how that first year of Devin Bush that he just sort of seemed like hesitant as a linebacker, which is like the worst thing you can do. So he looked athletic enough to be the linebacker, but he was always sort of late to the party. So they switched him over to running back, and he had a huge spring game, and that elevated him to like their number 2 running back, where he got some play during the course of the season in Ohio State. And at that, with that offensive line blocking for him, he looked great. So because he was never going to be the dude there, they had new recruits coming in. He transferred to Toledo, and at Toledo, Toledo had a really good team this year. They had a lot of talent, and I feel like even though they're a MAC team, they had a collection of some really good players. I'm sure we're going to hit on some of them, but anyway, Chip Trayanum, good hands, good all around back, good runner. Tyrion Stewart is known for being more of like a short yardage runner type, at Virginia Tech especially, but he has some of the best snags as a he's the guy that I don't know about the routes, but he's a guy that has a very large catch radius and was extremely comfortable and good at catching the football away from his body, which I think is a big skill that most running backs like catch it and collect it and then they run. But when I notice someone who's like catching it in all-in-one motion is already going on, moving downfield is valuable. And that's sort of how I feel about Dean Connors. Literally, Dean Connors is a better all-around running back than about 15 guys that'll get drafted in this draft. But he started at Rice. He went to Houston. He's a white kid with playing running back, which is never going to, make people notice you as a prospect at running back. Yeah, I mean, I'm just honest about that. And then he's not physically imposing, but he's not small either. and tested extremely. He was in the nines, I think, in his RAS. So he's actually a great athlete, and much like Terrion Stewart, good all around back. Good, like the thing you liked about Adam Randall is that his foot in the ground. Has good vision, sees the holes. I actually think he's extremely underrated in this draft class. Hit us up with the tight end situation. What do you think? First of all, what do you think the Steelers are looking for, and who fits that on this list?
Yeah, well, it's going to be very interesting, with the new offensive coordinator, Brian Angelico, guy who's been known to involve the tight ends, and I don't mean that in the sense of, Arthur Smith involved the tight ends. That's not what I mean. So it'll be interesting just because, one, I feel like we have two good tight ends. It's whether we use them correctly. So, like, Darnell's, obviously, you all know we love Darnell. He's huge. He actually lost some weight last year, to become a little bit more of a complete tight end. I think Pat Freiermuth is kind of better than a lot of people give him credit for, but you have to use him as a seam stretcher, on the rollout type tight end where you can get him running and get him open and stuff. Because he's not Travis Kelce, from a quickness standpoint and all that. He's not going to set people up or whatever, but he's got the size and he's got pretty good hands. So I feel like we have two really good tight ends. I think the question is, what do we really want to add to that room? Because, Johnny Smith was supposed to be this nice receiving option. He sucked last year.
Yeah.
So glad he's not on this team. So it's kind of a question mark. Do we want to go after like more of a pure pass catcher? Are we more looking for like that complementary third that can do, both?
That's why I sort of separated them the way I did, because it depends on how you look at it. I personally think the Pat Freiermuth's problem is he should be your wing or your H-back type, but the problem is he doesn't block well enough to play in that role. And so I feel like he's become this sort of specialized weapon against zone in the red zone. He's been a pretty good player throughout his career. But the problem is that, DJ Metcalf is known for not really being able to get off press in man coverage. And so teams have been playing a lot of man coverage against the Steelers. And that's a problem for a guy that really excels against zone. So I kind of looked at it like, if you could find me a pass catcher who was actually a plus pass catcher, who was a better blocker than Freiermuth, I could imagine that player being the tight end too, and being on the field a little bit more. But I don't know if that's the way they're going to roll things. But I feel like, what's the who was the guy for Dallas that was this probably before Jason Witten? Like, I just feel like you don't need to be a fantastic blocker. You just kind of need to be decent if you're a really good player in the pass game, or you have to be very good at both. So looking at this list of tight ends, how would you slice up these people?
Gotcha. Well, I will say this. If you're looking for like a truly dynamic receiving option, Kenyon Sadiq, tested unreal for a tight end. I mean, just like 6'4", 240, ran a 4.4 flat, something like that. And I still think he has room to get better too, because I think his hands sometimes, were a little suspect last year. But I mean, if you're looking for just true, I can beat anyone who you can kind of put on me as a defender, like, he's there. The next guy you've got on board, Eli Stowers, he is like a glorified big slot receiver. Like, he is more like Travis Kelce probably than anyone in this class, just from a sense of how he runs with the ball and gets open. As far as, and I'm a big fan of Sam Roush, actually. I've been on him for a while at Stanford. He's more of kind of an all-around tight end because he is such a good blocker, but was so rarely used as a pass catcher. I feel like there's a lot of untapped upside there.
Kenyon Sadiq, does he block well enough to fit that description I had of, if you're a really good pass receiver and you have to block at least reasonably well?
Yeah, probably not then.
Yeah. So I'm thinking in a different world, he positively is the guy. But I wonder, what is your take on the enigma that is Michael Trigg? Um, what I heard that blocking is not really the issue. Like, in other words, when he's assigned to block, he was into it. He was great at it, but he seems like a kid that hasn't really, like Mississippi, I think it was, asked him to leave the team, not because he was got into trouble off the field, but they just, for some reason, they didn't like his attitude or whatever. So I don't know where that, at some point, I feel like you're if enough time goes off the clock in the draft, you still might draft him because he's that good as a receiver. But I wonder what you like. How do you deal with someone like that? You want to avoid someone who's not sure? Because here's the thing: we weren't in the locker room. Maybe the coaches were whack and he was actually in the right, but you have no way of knowing.
Yeah, I mean he has phenomenal hands. I mean, you go to YouTube, he's making some unreal grabs, for a tight end. I didn't think he was quite as athletic as what I was led on to believe. Just from what people were kind of talking him up. When I heard, oh, great pass catcher, I thought, okay, he's got to be a pretty good athlete. And he is, don't get me wrong. He's just not like super dynamic athlete, but just really good, hands, as far as positionally and just grabbing them like that. I think the real question is, Mike Tomlin is not in Pittsburgh anymore. So he doesn't handle the locker, it's going to be a new locker room this year in quite a sense, because, Tomlin has found a way to motivate these these guys in the past and keep stuff under wraps and, deal with it his way. I don't know if they want to kind of like start getting away from that, with the player issues that they've kind of had with some of these guys or not. So, in my opinion, if he's got an attitude issue, I would probably stay away from him just because, I don't know, for Mike McCarthy to have long-term success, and we're all hoping he will, some of us have our doubts, but you need to make sure you establish a good locker room, because there were times that, like, towards the end of his tenure at Green Bay, whether you wondered if his locker room was that strong. Yeah. So I would say no, just based on that.
Yeah. I want to throw a couple of names at you and see what you think of them. I mean, for me, I feel like if you're going to go with all-around types, the two guys that really stood out to me were Matthew Hibner from SMU and Lance Mason from Wisconsin. And the thing that they have in common is their ability to they block very well. They're all-around tight ends. They're legit, can play in line. But they both had that skill to get up the seam and pass linebackers more quickly than you would think a tight end. Like, it's a rarer skill for a tight end to be able to do that. And in fact, that isn't even really, like, Pat Freiermuth, who was sort of known as a guy to do that, is not that great at that skill. As you said, he's better in the flats and, outbreaking routes or whatever, but going straight up the seam, I just think you have to have a certain kind of explosion in your first couple steps. And both of these guys have that. Hibner tested like a maniac. He tested like a, nearly the top athlete at the position. And, here's what's funny about him. He had RJ Maryland on his team, and RJ Maryland is like one of those glorified big slots and really good at it. But that's his shtick. He's not really going to block anybody, and he's not an all around tight end, but he's, if you want to move tight end, he's great. But Hibner actually started, RJ Maryland had a huge year in 2024, got hurt right at the end of the season, and Hibner took the job and then really didn't give the snaps back to RJ Maryland even when he was healthy. So that's pretty impressive. Lance Mason's a similar thing, probably somebody that you can get really late in the draft or as an undrafted free agent, but has a good all-around game. The guy I think fits best, and I've been on this for quite a long time now, is Daquan Wright from Mississippi. Much like Cooper from Indiana, who had like double the yards after the catch for balls that were thrown like beyond the line of scrimmage. Double of like the next best guy. Like, he's especially good at that. And that's the thing with Daquan Wright. He also had an extraordinarily high gains after the catch for a tight end. So he's somebody that, like, he's going to get open because he's a really good athlete. He's going to make a lot of plays in the passing game, and he's going to get extra yards on everything. And he's not a Darnell Washington blocker, but he's a much better blocker than Pat Freiermuth, I think. So he seems willing to do it and has the power to do it. So, maybe that's a guy that fits. Maybe tight end is not a position that is going to be a Steelers look in the first round, but if we're going to have a bunch of later round picks, that would be something I think could make this offense better.
Yeah, and just two more quick names I'll throw out there, just kind of athletes that I think are kind of underrated. John Michael Gillenborg from Wyoming. That kid is a really good athlete, can really move. I was actually on him last year, kind of same situation with Jonah Coleman. Got hurt last year, wasn't sure if he was going to test the draft waters or not. Ended up going back. Good thing he did, because he moved up this year, definitely with better play. And then the last guy, Dan Villari from Syracuse. He is a really good athlete, pass catching wise. I watched his tape, and he does a lot of things that like Travis Kelce does, just because he's such a good athlete. And like, this might be like only his second year of playing football. I can't remember. He was a outfielder for Syracuse baseball. That they got him to try out football, and like, he wasn't like amazing this year or anything, but it was like, there's a lot of solid foundation pieces if you want to try to develop a pass catching tight end with Dan Villari. He's like 6'4", 245, runs pretty good, but what I love is the short area quickness. He reminds me of like these slot receivers that just like effortlessly set people up. Like, that's the type of athlete he is when it comes to tight ends. So
I thought the Heath Miller, that was always sort of underrated part of his game, was that his short area quicks were like, man, he could just take one little nod or quick step and find open space, and which when you're a tight end, if, like I said, if you're a good enough blocker, that's the only skill you really need to have. You don't need to have much else. To have it work. Okay. Well, just not, I think we agree. We don't see it as like a necessarily a first round, second round type priority for the Steelers, but that at some point, they're going to want to add a guy to that mix, because I'm not even sure, do they have another tight end on the roster besides the two main guys? They have, I guess, what the guy that got hurt and was on IR last year. I'm not sure if he got released even.
So they have JJ Galbraith, and that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, they had that tight end that I actually kind of liked coming out, but he's had some he had a knee injury or something last year. Anyway, okay. Well, let's spend the next hour talking about wide receivers. No, I'm joking. I'm half joking because we could. There's going to be so many guys that we like. That's why I was trying to, let's separate this into two groups. Let's first talk about the wide receivers that fit this sort of versatility theme. So my personal opinion is that we ought to think about trying to get one of these guys fairly early, and then add later the best available wide receiver that's left. Like, that's kind of
on board with that.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of a plan. So with that in mind, let's talk about these versatile guys. Who on here stands out to you?
Yeah. Obviously you've got your top guys. Tate's going to be a top 10 pick. Cooper, my Indiana boy. Arrow's only pointing up. He's still a younger guy too. He's a junior that declared. So there's still room for him to get better, which is crazy, because I've just seen him take leaps every year, these past 2 years under Kurt Signetti.
Yep.
We mentioned him playing outside in 24, but then playing inside more in 25. So very versatile guy there. You have that on the board. I'm a big Ted Hurst fan. Just love Ted Hurst. He seems like kind of like the next George Pickens, just from a size, movement standpoint. Just as soon as I put on the tape, I was like, wow, that is another Pickens type.
He strikes me as
receiver.
Pickens with better like route running. His sort of like the basic footwork is better than Pickens's, but their games are really similar.
Yeah, well, Pickens has to want to run a route first, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. but I'm on board with that. Chris Brazel,
really good.
Really a guy that you and Corey turned me on to last year. One that It's funny because last year his 24 tape I wasn't a huge fan of, I'll be honest. But I think that was him just more acclimating to the Tennessee offense, and it's kind of a unique offense there. But boy, this year you got to see him put it all together. Just 6'5", moves incredibly well for 6'5" with his short area movement, great hands, can go up and get a ball. Just wow, very very good player.
It's sort of Martavis Bryant, right? I mean, that's the thing. He has kind of that vibe to him. I'm not sure he's.
I thought Ted Hurst even had a little bit of Martavis Bryant to him, just because he's a bigger guy that can move and can run after the catch. So both of them, I hear you.
Yeah, and I just feel like, me personally, if you got any of those top 5 guys on the list, or I actually think Jeremy Bernard, Jacoby Lane, if you couldn't somehow you got shut out of everybody, you this draft didn't fall your way, and all those guys went super early. I think even adding Caldwell or Jacoby Lane or Jeremy Bernard would all be amazing. I would feel so good about any of those outcomes. Yeah. Jacoby Lane, I feel was a little overshadowed by Mekhi Lemon.
For sure.
But he does more, and he's more of that variety of stuff. My thing with Lemon is I think he's a dog, and he's probably going to be a really good football player. Is he Jackson Smith and Jibba? I don't know that he's quite that kind of good athlete. Yeah. I feel like he's a fighter. He strikes me more like Steve Smith, a little bit sawed off, tough attitude, makes plays, wins contested plays, but he isn't necessarily the centerpiece of your offense. I feel like he's a piece you add to, if you got a good group and you add him to it, he's going to be a superstar. But yeah, that would be my question with him. But anyway, Jacoby Lane, I feel like does more. There's more variety to his game, not only in terms of the routes and positions, whatever, but also in terms of how he sets up his routes and the nuances of being a receiver. I feel like he's further along in that regard. And Jeremy Bernard, I don't know. He's not as exciting maybe as the guys above him that we talked about, but he's a really good fit for potential offense, because he's a big guy that can play inside and out.
Yeah.
And is very good at, the precise route running of the short routes, the short game, and then taking the ball from there and doing something with it. So
Jeremy Bernard, I think, is the guy that kind of stands out, but this is going to be weird with what we do with receivers. That's why it's kind of hard to fault them going for Pittman, but it could have been one of those things that we addressed for a long time. I like Kendrick Law, but that's a later guy. It just feels like if we end up going with a guy early, it's a lot more likely to be an outside guy,
If the Mike McCarthy offense is going to evolve into, a lot of this, ball's going to come out on time and it's going to hit a guy who's got to be in a certain spot and he's got to win to get there, then he's somebody that we should seriously think about. And the Steelers have shown a lot of interest in Jeff Caldwell from Cincinnati.
I saw that, yeah.
Caldwell is a freak athlete. He is he has a similar skill set to the Ted Hurst and the Brazels and the George Pickens of the world. So it's if you could unlock it, it would work. Capable of making absolutely highlight reel catches. So he'd be somebody you'd be the catch radius is amazing, and then he'll have easy plays where he doesn't make the play.
Yeah, it's the consistency.
Which is why he's somebody that's, listed further down this list. But literally on paper, or if you saw just his highlights, I could see why teams would fall in love with him. And he also fits this versatility thing. He would pop right into that offense. And if you're not counting on him to be a superstar in year one, I feel like he could be a really good contributor.
Gotcha.
You give me one more from this list if you have it, and I'll give you one.
Yeah. Dazon Stribling from Ole Miss. Much better player than what I think people give him credit for. He's in kind of one of those situations as Brazel. Kind of a different offense with the Lane Kiffin deal. But boy, he's 6'2", runs like a low 4.4, good hands, tough player, get blocks, willing blocker, and then that's one of the big reasons he stood out to me is you got to block if you want the Rock in Pittsburgh.
What's not to love? I mean, here's the thing. Josh Cameron in some years would be a guy we'd be all over with, so in love with him because he's a Hines Ward type, He's a former running back and he's tough, makes tough, tough plays and whatever. It's like, and made a lot of big plays for them. But it's like in this class with some of those guys above him, you're just like, okay, if sure, we'll take Josh Cameron, but it's like nobody is like running to the podium and they have to have Josh Cameron, in the first couple of rounds of the draft. But let's way it goes.
I'm actually a little down on Cameron. I think he's gonna have trouble separating in the NFL.
I do too, but so did Hines Ward.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I'm not saying that the problem is that not everybody has Hines Ward's personality or mentality either, right? So,
sure.
Yeah, it was just more like I think he was just such a good fighter, mainly. I'll give you like I think some of these guys that are going to probably be free agents and not drafted are better than some of the names that are talked about a lot more. Corey Rucker from Arkansas State. It's a disgrace that he's not viewed as being like at least a 4th round pick in this draft.
That's a name I need to work on.
Another player with a really big all around game, who's like no matter who he's had playing with him has always stuck out as being a really dominating receiver on his team. He's always been like the guy, and I think I like guys in college who were the guy. Tends to work out pretty well for them, in the NFL as far as them overperforming, as long as they can get over not necessarily being the guy, which some of them can't, like George Pickens. And then the guy, I mean, speaking of sleepers, a little bit less of a sleeper than Rucker, though, is Daniel Sopkowitz of Northern Illinois. And if you didn't see the FCS playoffs, just start watching Sopkowitz from round 1 of the FCS playoffs, because I forget exactly how many touchdowns he had in the playoffs, like maybe 7 or 8. But it was like they tried everything to stop him. They would be like running doubles and triples, and like no matter what they did to try to stop him, he would just figure out a way to get the ball and score touchdowns. And so he's like a bigger guy. He would even be a big, thought of as a big receiver compared to many of these others. I think he's 6'2" and something, but he's a bigger guy who runs routes like he's a slot receiver, but he's on the outside. So I think that a lot of that red zone playing outside receiver, the guys that make it look easy with the jump balls and whatever, really establish with their footwork, getting themselves in position to get to fades and jump balls and whatever. And I think he's particularly good at that. And so he's thought of as being kind of a jump ball guy, but he's a very good route runner. And the value that you're going to get with a guy like that is immense. There are probably 5 or 6 other guys on this list that I could still say really good things about, but that's the main ones. I'll just very quickly touch on, in terms of if we were just getting a slot receiver or just adding an outside receiver who's not really fits into this versatile mode. Some names that I want to mention before we get away from this is Cyrus Allen of Cincinnati. I don't know if you know his game, but he's a primarily slot receiver. Maybe he's somebody you could, give him a little bit of outside action. But if you watch Cincinnati games, it's just like he just made play after play after play. So this is what I was saying before with Jeff Caldwell. It's like you got Jeff Caldwell, who's like the superstar athlete, ex-receiver, but Cyrus Allen is the guy that made all the plays for Cincinnati. So he's just instantly open. When he went to the Senior Bowl, he was like the guy that you wanted to watch just run, embarrass defensive backs in that drill where they just do one-on-one in coverage with, no help, two-way go. He was the guy that was just running everybody, twisting them into pretzels. So really like him. That was a name I definitely want to talk about. I got a couple more, but I'll leave this to you. Who are the guys over on the second 2 columns that you are interested in?
Yeah, Chris Bell's a very intriguing option, just because he's probably would have been a 1st-round pick if he wouldn't have been hurt. He's coming off the ACL, so I view him in very high regard, just because his after the catch ability is really what makes him special. Like he's got real go speed once he can get in the open field. I view Boston Surratt kind of similar. I think they're going to be, good number 2 receivers. I question their ability to separate. If you're looking just for like fun guys, Bryce Lance, being Cole Payton's option at North Dakota State.
Yeah.
tall, speedy guy with pretty good hands. So you have to wonder, can he, do that at this next level? He tested extremely well this pro day. So hopefully he's good there.
I feel like he's just so Christian Watson, isn't he? He's like, it's like that school has like a series of linemen who all kind of look like they came from a factory. Their quarterbacks are sort of very similar. They're all were pretty good. And then these wide receivers, it's like they just keep pumping them out.
Yeah. And then as far as slot receivers go, I feel like there's quite a few slot receivers that I like in this draft. Lemon is obviously very good. Not quite as big on KC Concepcion as some other people are, but maybe it could have just been some of their offense this year was a little off.
At the hands, the problems with catching the football, I felt were more pronounced with him than I would like.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I'm moving around.
Yeah, you're good. Zachariah Branch would be a really fun addition just because he is like your supercharged slot wide receiver, especially if, Mike McCarthy wanted to get a slot kind of in the mold of like a Randall Cobb, that was very good with Rodgers. Like I could really see, and I think Pittsburgh has met with him at least twice at the combine. He might have came on a visit official 30. Yeah. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head.
I mean, it just feels like such a one-trick pony. Like who's the last guy who caught 90% of their college targets behind the line of scrimmage?
Sure.
Who came to the NFL and were able to duplicate that.
Yeah.
Like that's the part that worries me.
Legit concerns, but naming green you have on here, Kevin Coleman Jr. I think he's incredibly underrated. He's produced at every school he's been at. And yes, when I say every school he's been at 4 different schools. I don't remember.
Well, that used to be a real red flag, and now it's like normal.
Right. Farther down the list, Barry and Brown. I think we're both on that page or whatever. I actually got to meet a former quarterback of his 2 or 3 years ago, Bo Allen, who was at Kentucky with him.
Yeah.
And, I asked him back then, it was like, do you think Barry and Brown can take the next level? And he was like, yeah, he's a very special athlete. If he can put in the work to be a more rounded receiver, he could end up being very, very good. So
I feel like both those guys that used to be in Kentucky, Law and Barry and Brown, were so much better at Kentucky. And it felt like somehow they moved and it just it didn't really fit for them somehow. Which is a shame.
I have to wonder if the Nussmeier injury, really hindered Barry and Brown's ability to kind of showcase what he could do this year too. But I mean, like you put on some of his LSU stuff, it's very encouraging. The routes are good, but boy, he's just explosive, and you don't always find these guys that just have deep speed, and he is one of them in this draft class. So I feel like if you can get him and kind of mold him, could be really, really good. So
I dig that.
I'll kind of kick it to you for any other names.
If the kick return game were bigger, I mean, he would be a cat that fits the current kick return rules better than most do, because as you said, beep is sort of his routine. There's a couple of interesting guys for me in this the more slot types. Like I just don't, like I said, if it were 15 years ago in the NFL, a guy like Nick DeGennaro, that's it, from James Madison, would be like a New England. You, sir, are a New England Patriot. Like he plays almost exactly like those guys play. He's like can do all the things you in your mind you think a slot receiver does. Quick, short area quickness to get open on quick routes and whatever. But he also, like Edelman did, didn't turn that into like a seam route in a heartbeat and just beat you. You think he's gonna go left or right, and he just goes past you and makes a ton of plays. And I kind of feel like, I feel bad for the James Madison guys who didn't get to transfer to Indiana because they still did pretty well after Cignetti left. But the ones that went with him, of course, were turned into like big NFL prospects. And I feel like DeGennaro didn't make the cut to come over, but he's very, very good. Junior Vendros from Toledo. So I mentioned the Toledo. I've been mentioning some more players, but there's another guy sort of like very similar to Cyrus Allen, just a little bit smaller version of Cyrus Allen, but also made a ton of plays from the slot. And another name I have in purple here, Michael Wortham from Montana, is
He's
one of
good.
those cats where if you don't see much FCS football, Michael Wortham for like 2 or 3 seasons now, maybe even more, maybe when he was even a freshman, is just the guy that just, you know, who is the most likely person in the game to have a 75-yard touchdown, he would be your cat. So he was their wildcat quarterback. He was he would, you know, he had touchdown runs as a running back. He had kick returns and punt returns that are just crazy. And also he lined up on the outside as like an outside receiver and beat guys on deep balls and jump balls. He's not even a big dude, and he was like winning jump balls. Like I feel like he's one of those cats you just want to have on your team. Would be a really welcome addition to any team, but just a big play guy.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and I know a lot of people are into like Wetchen. Are you a fan of his?
You know, I got to see him play at Iowa. You know, I feel like he's more of a true, like, kind of a trick play guy. Like, they used him in a lot of sweeps and, you know, toss backs and stuff like that. Honestly, you know, he's mostly known as a returner, not as much as a receiver at Iowa. So,
yep,
I feel like very raw guy. But I mean, he's very talented. Don't get me wrong. Just, I think he's got more room to work on basic wide receiver stuff than some of these other guys.
I mean, shoot, man, this list though is pretty dang impressive. Like I just feel like almost everybody in those 3 columns, if they were drafted by the real life Pittsburgh Steelers, I'd be like, all right, let's roll. Like there's very few names in there that I would just go, eh. I mean, like I said, Colby Young and Eric McAllister is all about off the field. On the field, I take either of them. They could be really valuable. It's just kind of like off the field. It's tough to get over. Like Colby Young's was like a, you know, attacking his pregnant girlfriend. It's just bad. So, and I think Eric McAllister is the type of his off the field stuff feels like the kind of thing that is going to be fine for 2 or 3 years. And then suddenly he'll be making the news and, you know, but those cats can play, but literally other than guys like that, almost everybody here has something to offer and is, you know, in some ways a special player. Let's talk about the most important positions on offense, the offensive line positions. Sure. I'm going to throw it to you. Who are the cats here you think are? We talked about Steelers needs being obviously a starter at left guard, and then there's also my thought of like, do you want to draft somebody who potentially worst case can be your swing tackle who might be able to play guard and be in the competition to start at guard as well. So with that in mind, who are the names here that you're looking at that might make it to 21? Do you need to add a guard and a tackle? Do you need to add a tackle who can play guard if you need him to start there? I don't know. How do you feel about that situation?
I mean, it feels like another year where you could take a guard and a tackle, and the Steelers would be benefited in the first 2 picks by doing that. Felt like last year's kind of our only year where we had that break, but even so, you know, we've never really been big Broderick fans. I think that there's a lot of good options here. I think this is a strong line class. I think that any of those, like those top 2 guards are elite. Emmanuel, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Is Pregnon?
I think it is, but it could, you know, I don't know how he's going to come to the league and change his pronunciation, I predict.
Yeah. I'm not even going to try the top one. I just know like Ione, like.
Yeah, Vega Ione, you can just say.
That's Vega, fine. Yes, that's what everyone's going to. Like, I mean, that he's about as complete as, you know, really any guard that's come out. He's a beast. He's going where I think about as high as a guard will end up going. You know, that's not really a premium ticket position. Rightfully so, I'll say. But I think back Zion Johnson was a real big guard. Quentin, maybe not to the level of Quentin Nelson, but he's a beast. Emmanuel Pregnon, I think he's going to be a guy who was even better than the NFL than he was in college. I think he was a baller in college, but you know, guys like him, like those real, like, kind of seems high-hipped, but then when you watch him move, he really has an ability to sink, and that's one of the big things that I look for in linemen is like that hip mobility. because those guys who can't really bend, it's hard for them to get backwards. It's hard for them to mirror. You can be as athletic as you want in a straight line, but if you can't sink in those hips and change directions, it's tough. I love Keelan Rutledge, and I hope that he gets in that clean second round range. I think that, he's right up there with those other two in terms of ability, but, a guy that you might be able to get in the second round. Yeah. He's a mauler. He's got the attitude. He's got the physical traits. I didn't even look it up. Is he the brother of the Rutledge that came from Georgia before Tate?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't know.
Seems like it should be, Georgia Tech and Georgia.
Yeah, it doesn't say, I'm looking at the, I don't see any knowledge that he was, so it just might be a coincidence.
Well, because what makes me laugh is that, Tate Rutledge, he was gritty too, but my big, knock against him was that he couldn't really move. He was very much like a wall. Yeah. I think with Keelan Rutledge, he can really move. Like, he can pull, he can get back in his drop. Honestly, it's a guy where, like, if he wanted to play tackle, I think he could, even though he really hasn't done it,
If I said, as much as we love the top guards in this class, but we can't spend a second round pick on one. Mm-hmm. What, who do you like out of that sort of, what's left? Like, who are the guys that are going to outplay their draft position who could?
I think the big one that we really haven't touched on is down there towards the bottom, Caden Barnett. I think he's out of Wyoming. There's one of those big cowboy colors. He's maybe not as athletically gifted as those top guys in the class, but I think
I think he is. He tested he had incredible testing, so I think he is.
Yeah, technically speaking, yeah. But no, I forgot about that. He was a super RAS tester. I did forget about that. But yeah, that's an obvious one for me. A couple of those other guys, let me see here. Zoom in. Logan Jones is real solid. That's a guy, not a guy I'd really like bang on the table for, but he's a guy that I think definitely has a little bit of juice. I think even a guy like I mentioned him, like Jaeger Burton, he's a center. He's not small. He's a guy who could slide in and out. Mm-hmm. But it's a strong class up top, and I think part of that is where you do have to be prepared for some of those later options, because I think it might pull the value itself up, where if you do need a guard in the beginning of that second round, there's not going to be, those big three or those top two really there waiting on you.
Yeah. Well, and it's just a function of like, what do you, there's a lot of needs and a lot of positions where they aren't as deep as guard. So that's the thing. It's like, do you just go BPA and you let the chips fall how they may? These are the questions we'll get to after we go through the players. What about tackles? Any tackles here that you like, either just as a tackle or as a swing tackle guard?
I've loved Francis since he was a freshman on campus. His older brother was a linebacker. His older brother was a linebacker at Washington State back in the Cam Ward days.
I remember.
So kind of had an eye on him back then, and he's been a beast since he stepped up. Some people got prospect fatigue, I think, middle of the year. He's an elite prospect. I think he's one of those guys where people are kind of quick to say, like, oh, like, he could be a really good guard. It's like, yes, that's true, but he also could be a really good tackle. I think that he's not a guy I'm just bumping in just because. But Fanu and they very similar profiles, actually, not just because they're wearing the Utah uniform. Both can pull out of the tackle position, which I think is a big sign of athleticism, even if that's not something really done in the NFL. Both of them have good hands. Utah really does some good stuff with their O-line coach. I'm not sure who it is, but they get back. They great kicks, stuff that's in the NFL. Like, that's one thing that a lot of people miss, is that you kind of have an eye on those kick sets a lot, because NFL speed rushers and college speed rushers are two completely different animals. If you can't get back and beat someone to a spot, you're going to get diced on third and long. But I think both of them are athletic enough where, even though Utah didn't do a lot of really deep sets, I think that they both could do it. Then Caden Proctor, athletic freak. That not much. I'm sure we'll talk more about him. Max I don't know how to say the last name, but yeah, he's really solid. I feel like that's a guy where kind of really depends on his range, but He's just a solid tackle. I think he's a for sure starter. And then kind of looking at some sleepers, I think Markel Bell, he got a little bit of crap thrown on him for that Senior Bowl rep, but I feel like with him, you go off the film. He's a wall. He's maybe not like a pin and pull guard in the NFL, like maybe not a gap scheme fit, but he's one of those guys that you kind of mentioned. He could go and he could definitely go and be a mauler on like a wide zone or inside zone at guard where he doesn't have as much gap responsibility. Then, a guy like Nolan Rucci, I really wanted him in draft team. That's a late fit for swing tackle that you kind of mentioned. Maybe not as much of a guard convert. He's kind of high hipped, which I think is easier to get away with a tackle than guard. But he's definitely a swing candidate.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some just kind of elite prospects here. Vega's just that man's just stupid good. I mean, if he's at 21, that's one of those sprint to the podium type picks. If you ask me, you're getting a guard that's going to play on your line for the next decade, and you won't even have to look back.
Yeah.
I like Chase Basantis. Got on him kind of early. Rutledge is just one mean son of a gun. Talk about a man who just likes to bury people and eat them the next morning for breakfast.
Yeah, Corey's going to have something to say about him, I'm sure.
Yeah. Kind of a name you don't have highlighted, who I think is going to be better in the league and really kind of underrated, Brian Parker, the second from Duke.
Okay. It's mostly because I see him being a center, which is probably why I don't have him.
So I kind of had him as like, he can play anywhere on the interior. He's obviously probably not going to play left tackle. Couldn't a pinch, which is kind of why I like him, just because of our left tackle uncertainties.
Yeah.
But I felt like you're going to get a guy here who's, started a bunch of games for Duke, done it at a pretty high level. He's like first team all ACC like the last 2 years or something like that. Gets off the line with some good movement. He's not a slouch or whatever. Not like physically dominating, but just a guy that is gonna do a good job and get the job done type of guy. So I liked him. I kind of view Matt Golden for Michigan State in the same way. Like interior guy that can play all three spots pretty well. Let's see here.
What do you think? Go ahead. Keep going.
You have him in purple, but Fabechi Nowehu from Oregon.
Yeah.
That kid's going to be good.
Oklahoma. Yeah, that one, right? So.
Yeah. What did I say? Did I say Oregon?
Yeah. I think he's a bit rawer, and also I was surprised he didn't test like the kind of athlete that I thought he was. And I feel like if you're taking somebody who's raw to develop, I'd rather take somebody who is maybe a little bit more of upside, but he does look like an NFL guard. I mean, he looks like the guy you want to come off the bus.
Right.
First.
Right.
I like him.
If you want to get more like tackle centric, guy that could play tackle but may end up being like a really good guard. I thought Drew Shelton from Penn State kind of fits the same mold that I liked. What's the guy's name? I think it was Anthony Becton from NC State, like last year, the year before. Just one of those guys where it's like, boy, if he can't play tackle, I think he's going to be a great guard.
Right.
I like Jude Bowery, probably just as much as some of the top tackles.
Wow.
I think he is really underrated and was kind of stuck on a bad team in Boston College. Competitive, but not great.
Yeah. They had
so Monroe Freeling, has a chance to be really good.
Worry about him like missed assignments kind of, I just wonder if some offensive line guys just have the feel for what to do when they're not covered or they get to the second level or somebody coming backside that they have to read. It's sort of like the part of a very underrated part, I think, of offensive line play. That sort of awareness. Like if you were Madden, is your awareness 75 or is it 99? So that's the one knock I have with him. Otherwise, I feel like, but like when I watch them play, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that really stood out to me is the guys that really stood out to me were the other guys, but like Micah Morris.
Yeah, he's a good player too.
I mean, Micah Morris, the criticisms are like, oh, his pad level's high. Well, he's a gigantic dude.
Yeah.
He's one of the biggest guards in the class. But
yeah,
I felt like, I feel he falls into this thing that a lot of people, when they're watching players like this, fall into, which is really big, unusually big players always look slow to people when they're watching them. They don't, it's like the Darnell Washington or even Mario Lemieux when he was playing. It's just like bigger guys move in a way that you don't realize how much ground they're covering. And I felt like there's no problems with Morris's movement skills. It's more like if he's blocking a defensive tackle who has really good leverage, who's as good an athlete as him, like what will that look like? That'll be the part of his game that he has to work on. But I honestly, other than it's sort of a slam dunk for me. I could get behind taking Oni or Pregnon. We haven't talked about yet, or even Besantis or Rutledge. I could see taking those guys and spending a premium pick to get them because what you're getting. But I feel like you're going to get nearly the same kind of thing with Micah Morris, and I'll bet you he goes a lot higher than people think he's going to go because he plays at the premium school. And he tested like a 10 and he's huge, and you put all those things together. It's like, okay, why are people thinking of him as like a 6th or 7th round pick? It's not happening. So I think 4 is the floor for him. And maybe you double dip. This is kind of what I was getting at. If you draft somebody early who, for example, the example I would give would be Caden Proctor. So if you draft Caden Proctor early, you're getting a guy that can play guard tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I think he could play left guard for any team in the NFL at whatever he is, 20 years old. And you're going to be all right. And he might be able to win a job at tackle. He might be one of your 2 best tackles when it's all said and done. Maybe, as well as Fatano has played at right tackle, if you want to have your left guard be more active, maybe you move a guy with more movement skills. Maybe you move Fatano to left guard and you play a guy like Proctor at right tackle and you have a better 5 on the field. But if you do that, then you can draft one of these guards like Shrouth or Farmer or Micah Morris or Jeremiah Wright later, double dip at the position, because then you have a swing tackle and some real competition at guard, and then you're not stuck if Broderick Jones never decides to retire from the NFL.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those reasons why it's like, I know I said, we may trade some picks and move up, but it's like, boy, if we stand pat, we can really fill out some of the weaker areas on this roster. Like O-line depth is not great right now. So
there's a lot of players that are established with the team who I don't think are not upgradable. Like that's the thing, right? Is Spencer Anderson a decent player for them? Yeah, sure. Is he upgradable? Absolutely, right? Yeah. And below that, there's nothing. So I never have a problem with investing in the trenches. It's not going to bother me. A guy that I don't know that well, who's sort of a late riser in the process. I'm wondering what you think of Max Einecker.
I think he's going to be a good right tackle. Could be one like an elite guard. Just no one's getting past him at guard. But I think he can be. I think he can play right tackle. So, my only worry is sometimes you just worry with how those guys are going to transition to NFL speed on the outside constantly. I don't think you really face that a ton in Arizona State. You're going to get a lot more of that in the NFL, but he's a really good player. I will say this. I think Ian Nachor is just as good as player as Proctor is.
Yeah, I think they're close, and they're going to go around the same time.
Right. So I think you're viewing a guy like that, very similar grade. And if you're going to get him 20 picks later, wow.
Yeah, I think Proctor's better run blocker. I think as right tackle prospects. Like if I just I just need a right tackle to solidify my line, then I'm going with Max. But yeah, if I'm looking for like some more upside, Proctor's just a freak. Like the power, like his explosion for his size is rare. So that's something that I think it's for him. Actually, the only downside with him is he's somebody that you can control his weight, because when you're that young and that big,
Yeah.
it goes one of two ways. Either you get to the NFL and you get on a real program for nutrition and you work hard and you end up being the best version of your body you can have, or you get sloppy and you're out of the league in 3 years. So I'm interested to know. And I feel like he's got a little bit of the DeJuan Jones vibe to him.
Okay.
Jones was better at the outside speed, but they're both gigantic tackles who can move and have gifts, long arms, and stuff that helps them get past the stuff they're not good at. So I'm maybe a little bit higher on Caden Proctor than I was even 2 months ago. I feel like everything that's happened from the Senior Bowl on has sort of made me feel a little bit better about him. And then one other tackle that I wanted to mention, if you go, or if you, a couple maybe, but if you go guard early, and then later you want somebody that's going to have a shot at being your swing tackle. Some names that I like, Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern. I feel like, as a versatile player, I think he's probably, his career arc is solid rotational offensive line piece for many years. He has that kind of toolbox where he could play all over the place. Trey Zune is another guy that's like that, where he probably can play all 5 positions. Great guy to have dressed on game day. Comes from both Northwestern and Texas A&M have excellent offensive line coaching, and you can tell by the prospects that come out from those schools that they're very good at it.
I didn't realize Zune came from Northwestern.
Okay. No. Texas A&M. Tiernan's the Northwestern kid.
Oh, sorry.
But everybody from Texas A&M that's come out has been stellar.
Yeah.
So they have I feel like Zune was playing left tackle for them this year, but I think he's really center. So he played left tackle and center. That's all I really need to know about him. And Jesse Davis, an interesting name that we didn't talk about. Billy Schrouth. These are people that maybe the Steelers have shown more interest in than we like to think about them. So maybe that's the range they're really thinking about, adding somebody who can, maybe play a swing tackle and maybe, really play guard for you eventually. They both fit that category. The one tackle I feel like is going to be available after the first 2 rounds, who might have the upside to be like a Pro Bowl starting tackle, would be Demetrius Crownover of Texas A&M. Another gigantic dude. I think he's 6'8" and in the 330s or 320s or something. But he is someone that he improved so much from the early part of the season to now, that like by the towards the end of the season he was playing better, and then he played in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. I think he might be the only guy. I usually kind of keep tabs on this. I think he might have been the only offensive or defensive lineman that won every rep that he had in one-on-ones.
Wow. And
for a guy that had some issues with oversetting and with hand usage at the beginning of the season, he must have been working with somebody, a really good coach for his draft process, because I feel like he has made the most improvement of anybody I've seen. And I feel like there's a guy there that is big and super long arms, and he came from a good program that, recruits good offensive linemen and coaches them pretty well. And then he's just, he's a little lost in the shuffle. So that's a name.
Yeah, no, he's a stellar athlete. You're absolutely right. He's very fun to think what he could become.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're going to draft a tackle in this class a little bit later, because I'm not sure it's a real giant deep tackle class. I feel like it kind of ends there in terms of guys that I think will really stick at tackle.
Yeah.
So, and Crownover's probably worst case the middle of the 4th round, I would say. So it doesn't really feel like a draft where you're going to get a tackle late, unless you're really going to dive for a small school player like Eric Cade, the gigantic left tackle from Missouri State. It's actually a pretty good mover for his size.
Okay.
Riley Mullman is a name that a lot of people who follow like the pro day action and like what's the buzz from pro days,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about him. He's from Wisconsin, and as a player that's sort of more highly thought of by scouts than necessarily draft people. Big, tall guy.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
playing right tackle for them, but probably has like the footwork and the build to be a left tackle, maybe. So as a developmental tackle, he seems like a good choice. I included this next category because one thing about Mike McCarthy, he loves the fullback. And I feel like if you're gonna have a offense that has a fullback, the Steelers really don't have anybody right now on the roster that can do that job. And they didn't bring anybody in free agency. That's a sneaky little hint that I think they're going to draft a fullback or at least bring one in as an undrafted free agent. And it's a kind of a position in college football that doesn't exist very much, right? It's just like
Right.
maybe of this list of guys I have listed here, the 4 or 5 guys at the bottom and Pedersen near the top are like the only guys that really play fullback.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a couple on here that I think are maybe headed for that when they go to the NFL. Tell me a little bit about Riley Novakowski first, because he's someone that I feel like fits that mold of the sort of the all do it all fullback type.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When IU brought him in this offseason, I thought, this is a guy that doesn't scream like he's going to do much for us. Boy, was I wrong, and I couldn't be more glad I was wrong. But, because I saw this guy, he's barely 6'3", but he actually ran faster at his pro day. He ran like a 4.72 or something, but all he did all year for IU was just make plays when we needed him to. And he surprised everyone, because we brought in Jack Andrews, this kid from Tennessee that we thought was going to be the bigger, better receiving tight end. Couldn't have been more wrong. Very much like the tight end we had last year or 2 years ago, Zach Horton. Just sledgehammer, and he's a better athlete. He does it all. He runs incredibly good routes for a guy that's 6'3", 255 or whatever. I think he measured in at the pro day. Couldn't be a nicer dude either, as far as like locker room guy. So if we're going to experiment and take on like a fullback tight end, he is incredibly versatile. He actually scored a touchdown in the championship game from the fullback position on a dive. So like he's gotten some work there too already. He's playing as a lot under center.
Well, he's playing as an H-back, which in college is where they play the fullback types.
Right. So, but yeah, honestly, just much better player than I anticipated. Big reason for Indiana's success. He's one of the most underrated parts of of their championship run this year.
Yeah, I thought so too. I just feel like if you're looking for somebody like a Kyle Juszczyk who's going to be able to do a lot of different things, he fits that mold. Pedersen, you like him more than I do. I think he's okay. He's sort of considered to be the top fullback prospect. He's okay, but I'm not sure he's particularly good at anything. Like, you know what I mean? He's a good enough blocker and a good enough with the ball in his hands and can get you some little, a little typical short passing game stuff. But I'm not really sure he's going to move the needle a lot. I have a feeling that probably NFL teams don't like him as much as draft people. He's at the opposite end of that spectrum. But, maybe there's somebody out there that really loves him, and it wouldn't, if the Steelers are going to just go chalk at, fullback without any sort of like imagination for converting somebody, then maybe that's the guy they want to go after. Jared Kanak is a little bit like Riley Nowakowski, but just maybe not as good at it. And so another name that sort of people have talked about. Jackson Acker is more of just a running back who's big, who's really, I think his role in the NFL is going to be a special team player. I don't see him as being a real great blocker. He was uncomfortable really doing stuff. He's not a good enough running back to make it as a running back, but I could see him making a roster as a special teams guy because he's an outstanding athlete and is big. He's a guy you want to run down in coverage, coverage teams. Landon Robinson, to me, like, I don't know how you feel about him as a defender, but I feel like as a defender, we'll look at him also in the defensive line coming up because we're going to transition to that next anyway. But there are going to be some limitations of him as a defender because of his size, right? and it may or may not be enough that you have an appetite for it. But I do know this: in short yardage for Navy, he lined up at fullback.
Yeah,
and he plowed the shit out of the offensive line.
He did.
I mean, well, I was actually watching Eli Heidenreich, and and I saw plays where the two of them were the blockers. So Heidenreich was like lined up in a sort of like that we used to be called the flanker position, where he was kind of like not quite out wide and not at the line of scrimmage, but sort of as a flanker back, like almost at a wishbone. And then he down blocked on the edge guy and knocked him sideways. And before he could even get to the edge guy to knock him sideways, Landon Robinson went through the tackle and whatever that side of the line was and just like collapsed it as a fullback, and the running back just sort of fell over it, and got the first down. I was like, okay, like you guys are, can we envision Landon Robinson as a fullback? Well, then there's Landon Robinson with the fake punts. He had the one that was like a 60-yard run where he caught it as the up back, and he just looked like so natural running the football. It was frightening to see someone 290 pounds running it.
Running the ball. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like, do you think anybody really wants to tackle that dude? No, they're waiting for him to run out of gas or run out of bounds.
Right.
So that was pretty impressive. And then at his pro day, I know that I saw just tiny little clips, but that he went through the full workout at fullback and caught passes. And the remark that I heard from several people there was that he was remarkably good catching the football. And you can actually see it in his, some of the other stuff that he does. He's got like athlete hands. Like if he jumped into your pickup game in basketball, like he wouldn't be the worst guy, right? So, or on the baseball field, like he could play sports.
Yeah, you know where he's going to get drafted? The Giants.
Yeah.
Yeah, take over that Pat Ricard role.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, there's only a couple of teams that are really sort of into that fullback thing. And if you're one of them, you got to get a little bit creative. Like Denver last year, Scott, help me out, the defensive lineman that they turned into their fullback.
Oh, yeah. Shoot.
Scott. Here, I can look it up.
I know who you're talking about.
But here's the thing. I remember that Corey saw him at the I think it was the Hula Bowl and was like, this guy is like, first step is so quick, and he's just beating everybody off the ball in one-on-ones.
Is it Scott Matlack or something?
Matlack, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
And I felt like, so he was a good enough defender, but he just had some shortcomings. I think he had short arms was his thing. And so he was kind of like hard pressed to win some of those battles against better, longer athletes. Right. Mm-hmm. So they converted him to a fullback, and he stuck at fullback and has been pretty good for them in that role. Mm-hmm. And good catching the football, whatever. And I feel like this is a sort of a similar situation. I could, even though you laugh and you're like fullback is part-time gig or whatever. Well, the thing is, if you get a guy like Landon Robinson, he can he played all 4 special teams units in college, I believe. And he can give you some spot snaps on the defensive line. It's like he's you would think, oh, he's a pass rusher or whatever at that size, but really he was a guy that just was like impossible to move in the run game. So he's like a clogger in the run game. So you get into goal line, you bring that guy in on defense, he helps you there. So I'm like sort of fascinated with this idea of getting a role player like Landon Robinson can do a lot of different things.
I mean, I think it's becoming more common that you see NFL teams having specific role players that can do certain things. What's his name? Taysom Hill. He had such a unique role. Like there are these guys now that just have unique roles that thrive in them. So like, what's the problem with having some good role players that can do exactly what we want them to do?
Well, unless they're Cameron Hayward, and then everybody just wants to talk about what a waste their roster spot is or whatever, right? So right on. Well, look, we're pretty good. We made it in under an hour and a half to get to defense. So
I already say we've covered one side of the ball. All
pretty
right.
Good. Yeah. Well, there's a lot more positions. There's a lot more positions on that side of the ball too. So that's a good thing, right?
Well, that's it for part 1 of the Mock Draft War Room special. In part 2, we will get to the defensive side of the ball. So check out the next episode of the SteelerFury.com Pittsburgh Steelers Show podcast.